Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Karen. I am a late diagnosed autistic ADHD person, right? I'm one of these people that you've been hearing about, reading about. So many people have been getting diagnosed with autism, and especially a lot of women in their older years that, they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even 70s and 80s, I've been hearing, that are just finding out they're autistic or have ADHD, or like myself, are ADHD, which is having autism and ADHD together, which they didn't used to say was possible. Um, and actually, that's the topic of today's kind of short video, I think. I was going to actually talk about my diagnostic process in this video, and I realized a couple of things. Number one, that we kind of needed to lay some groundwork or do some housekeeping a little bit around the topic, just because it is so much in the news. When I was at the grocery store, in the checkout line the other day, and right there, you know how they have those special edition magazines on certain topics, and there it was, autism on one of the magazines. And so I have a few things to say about that. It's now been right at a year since I first started suspecting that I had autism. And so over this past year, I've learned a lot. And yet I am not going to make this an educational video or even an educational channel so much. But there are certain things that really do need to be talked about. So I thought I would do that first. And then the other reason this is going to be a relatively short video is, or has to do with what happened after I recorded my first video. And so I actually wasn't even going to, I really had to think about whether I was going to come back on and do another video right away. In that first video, I was very clear that I don't know how often I will be uploading videos. I said it could be once a week, 3 times a week. I just didn't know. And I think right now I do know it might be a little longer between videos. Let me share one story, and also to set you up to maybe entice you to stay for the whole video. One thing I have determined I want to do is pull an oracle card or a tarot card for each of these videos to sort of leave you with something to think about at the end. And so if you stay to the end, I will be looking at an oracle card from the Love Who You Are oracle deck, which is very much about what this channel is going to be about, is love who you are. So anyway, stay tuned for that. But after I recorded that first video last week, it's so interesting. So let me go back. When I first moved away from Texas and came up to Ohio in the fall of 2023, and spent months and months, the whole year, I now was away from the family stress I had moved away from. I had left my job, so I didn't have all of that on me. And even after the family stress and the work stress was stripped away, the overwhelming pressure that I felt on a day-to-day basis did not dissipate. Now think about that for a second, right? You're going about your daily life. You've got your daily stressors you feel at work, at home, and in your mind you're thinking, oh, if the world could just stop and I could catch up, if everything could just stop. That was my biggest dream, honestly. I wanted the world to stop, everybody stop except me, so I could catch up. That was my overriding anxiety. And even after I left work, even after I left this family situation I was in, I still felt that way. it was a shock to realize, and that was another reason that was leading me towards something more is going on with me. It's not just that I needed to recharge my batteries, right? I was seriously fucked up and I didn't know why. And so when I recorded that first video last week, a lot of those stressors that I had really worked on lessening over the past year came rushing back, and the amount of pressure that I felt on myself to produce videos and learn about this and learn about that, and I've got to learn how to edit, and I have to learn, blah 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 blah. I mean, my mind just wouldn't shut up. And so this is a process, guys. This is a true process of coming back to yourself, and sometimes for the very first time getting to know yourself and understanding why you're feeling the things you're feeling and blah 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 blah. And so I really thought about, I want to be able to add value to whoever comes to this channel. And I think that just by sharing my story, it can help some people. But I also want to be careful. I really want to do this with integrity. I want to share my truth, because it's not going to do any good if I come on here and sugarcoat anything. So anyway, all of that to say, I decided I did want to keep going, but I'm going to take the pressure off myself as much as possible so I don't undo some of the positive things that I've been able to bring into my life. My overarching orders, so to speak, are to nourish myself, to learn how to take care of myself. I'm learning how to actually live for the first time in my life. How to treat myself well, how to be productive without the self-flagellation, there's a lot of different pieces of it. So, oh no, okay, hold on, Oliver, I'm going to pause this. Come here, babe. Come here, push the door open. Come on. Here he comes. You guys have to meet Oliver if you're going to stick around for any time. Hold on. Here. Come here, baby. Oh. He has a sweater on today because, as you know, it's very cold. But this is Oliver. Can you say hi? Yes, he's a very pretty boy, isn't he? So anyway, I'm going to do this with as much authenticity as I can. Again, I'm really going to try not to script anything, which is very unusual for me. As you'll notice, no makeup today other than a little lipstick, which is also very new for me. I would never have put my face out there without makeup in the past. So anyway, what I want to talk about today is, first of all, some disclaimers. I was diagnosed with ASD1, Autism Spectrum Disorder Level 1, which is, there's so much politics here, you guys. I was shocked to discover the amount of politics. So first of all, if you have ASD2 or 3, or a family member, loved one is ASD2 or 3, a lot of what I say may not pertain to you. I realize that, obviously I am verbal. I don't have a lot of the challenges that someone with ASD2 or 3 has. I do not have intellectual disability. I do have an IQ of 167, and that they're now saying that, or some of the research is saying that high IQ can be a type of neurodiversity in itself because it has its own issues with the wiring and everything else. And so I can only speak from my own lived experience. And if I end up using any terms that offend you, I'm sorry. I'm still new to this community, and I know that, for instance, when you talk about ASD1, one of the ways it can be explained or is explained as it being um, a, a what's the word? See, this is what happens. Functional shit. It is, what's the word? I'll come back to that part. Because it's escaping me at the moment, but it is low. Okay, so I think the preferred way of talking about ASD1 is that we are low support needs, rather than high functioning. Because to say that ASD1 people are high functioning, it makes it sound like we don't have any issues, and that is absolutely not correct, right? Yes, we can function at a higher level, and so we pass, more easily because we know how to mask and blah blah blah. But the toll that it takes can be highly debilitating, depending on the situation, whether you're close to, having a meltdown or a shutdown, a burnout. So there's a lot that goes into it. But all of that to say, I don't mean to offend anyone if I use terminology that you don't. And if, please feel free to comment, and I'm always open to learning. But I do know that there is a sad state of affairs in the psychiatric. You just want to, he doesn't want to get down. It's really messed up. It's really messed up. There's so much research that's needed. There are a lot of issues with the whole diagnostic process. The only reason I was able to get my diagnosis is because I paid for it. And the only reason I was able to pay for it was, I was in a position where it hurt to spend that $1,100, but I did it, right? But a lot of people don't have access. They don't even have access to the amount of money it takes to get a private diagnosis. If you try to go in, God, people can't even get the diagnosis because if someone comes in and says, hey, I did this research, I really think I might have autism, can I please get a diagnosis? You don't have, they're just flat out refused, like they don't know their own mind. And if you want to get me going on anything, try telling me I don't know my own mind anymore. That's one thing I'm solid on now. But anyway, so there's research there's needed. There's training that's needed not just in diagnostics, but in therapy. Oh my God. I mean, the sad thing is that people will go to therapy and say, hey, let's talk about autism. I'm really thinking I might be. And the therapists don't have enough education at this point that's keeping up with everything that's being uncovered in the trenches in the autistic community. So it wasn't even thought, as I said, they didn't used to think that you could have autism and ADHD at the same time. And now they're seeing the prevalence of having both autism and ADHD is very high. So, however, he's very clingy right now. So, all of that to say, I am a novice and I don't know a lot. One thing I will be doing is providing links to different resources that I found helpful. And as I said, in my next video, I'll actually talk about how I started putting the pieces together that I was autistic and how I went about getting the diagnosis. There you go. So what I was saying first about that they didn't used to think that you could have both. Up until about 10 years ago, you may have heard of Asperger's, right? And that's what, a lot of people thought that they were, had Asperger's. And now that term doesn't even exist as of 10 years ago. So, 10 years ago, I may have been diagnosed with Asperger's. And now they just rolled it into the autism spectrum disorder -1. So all of that to say is, if you have different knowledge than I do, please feel free to share it, but also just keep an open mind. I am not an expert. I am sharing my personal experience and my current level of understanding of the whole diagnostic issues. The second thing I want to say that's related to that is self-identification. A lot of people call it, self-diagnosis, and I think the better term is self-identification, because there are so many people that are, they've done their own research and they're starting to look at the symptoms, the characteristics of autism and or ADHD or other types of neurodivergency, right? It is just as valid for dyslexia, right? There are different types of neurodivergence that can cause a lot of the same issues. And so because of the lack of training and awareness and research within the psychiatric community, psychological community, as well as the barriers to getting a formal diagnosis, mainly money and not even being believed, it's very valid for somebody to be able to self-identify as autistic. And personally, I don't think I've ever been on TikTok, maybe to follow a link once or twice that took me there. Usually, though, I stick to Facebook and YouTube, right? But I guess there had been a whole thing, and maybe is still going on TikTok or Instagram, mainly TikTok, I think, about, I guess it's one of the ways autism sort of blew up, is people started listening to these different TikTokers. And so you have to use your discernment, and I don't want to prejudge or judge anybody about how they came to their self-identification, whatever. And if they don't choose to go on for a formal diagnosis, that's something too that, again, if you don't have the money, but you can actually start helping yourself by self-identifying as autistic, and you've done your research, then, everybody has their own path to walk. So, okay, I'm going to leave all of that there. And let's talk about what it actually is. And I think one of the best descriptions I have heard throughout this past year is, I want you to picture this. So we've all seen movies or videos of like a recording studio, right? So imagine being in a recording studio, and on the other side, on one side of the glass, there's the person who's recording the song, or the band that's recording a song, and there's the mics and everything, and they're performing. And on the other side of that glass, that's where the record producer is, right? Or the sound engineer that has that big, he's like barking in the back, so please disregard Oliver. There's that big sound mixing board, right? And it has all those different slides that stand for all the different things that sound boards would have on them. But picture that soundboard as being us. Every single person is represented by that soundboard, but every single person's dials, or those sliders, are going to be at different levels of the board. And for all the different characteristics, especially so your senses and your senses is the main thing that's coming to mind right now, but anything that's measured in the autism spectrum is on that board, right? So some people are more sensitive to sound or less sensitive to sound. Empathy, right? One of the things that is talked about a lot with autistics is that, they don't have any empathy. They're just really cold and they don't know how to relate to people, right? And so you have a slider for empathy. And all of the different sensory inputs and communication inputs and social inputs. Those are all across that sound mixing board. I'll see if I can find the video where this one researcher used that example, because it was so good. It really helped me a lot to understand and visualize what was going on with me. So if you think about that soundboard, and then you think about like the whole bell curve thing, right? Well, the majority of people who are, let's call them neurotypical, right? The neurotypical people are going to measure, like if you think of a scale of 1 to 10, and those sliders go all the way up to 100 for the highest something can be, and down to 0 for the lowest level something can be. And the majority of neurotypical people are going to probably fall into a range of like whatever, 40 to 60, let's say. So their sliders are all going to be in that middle range. And they might have a couple of outliers, like, oh, this person is kind of sensitive to smells, and so maybe their slider on smell sensitivity, odor sensitivity, would be at a 70 or something. Or there can be some outliers, but the majority of their stuff is going to be in the middle. What happens with neurodivergent people is typically that they have what's called a very uneven profile, meaning that their sliders are at the top or at the bottom, right? They are very high or very low. And so, like, because everybody has a sense of smell per se, right? And some people, like, they hardly smell anything, or they're super sensitive to the smells. And the majority of people, again, are kind of in that middle range. So when you have someone who, has autism, ADHD, those type of things, their sensitivities or their, like, okay, so for let me speak for my own sliders, right? For my own sliders, I am hypersensitive on smells. I am hypersensitive on empathy. So for, again, going back to that, autistic people, they don't have any empathy. No, they can, sometimes that's true. Sometimes their empathy slider is all the way at the bottom. And sometimes, like me, it is like at the 99th percentile. And so I am so sensitive to other people's energy and feelings, and that I can get overwhelmed because I care too much, and sometimes it overwhelms me and almost shuts me down. And then there are like hearing things. One of the things I found out was that I have an auditory processing disorder, which always used to make me feel stupid because I would miss things people would say. But there's like this lag sometimes. It's like Charlie Brown's teacher thing. I would hear people, I would see their mouth moving, but sometimes I would just hear wah wah wah, and like, and it would take me. So then I'd be, oh, ha, and I'd smile and laugh, and Oliver quit it. So anyway, there's the whole slider thing. I hope you can see what I'm talking about, right? Some people are very, very much, have difficulties processing executive functioning type of things, and then others are great at it. So all of that to say, we're all different, and I said that in the first video, but if you've seen one autistic, or if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because we really do all look differently. And I think up until, recently, when people thought of someone having autism, people were very much thinking of someone who has the autism spectrum disorder level 2 or 3, that have a lot more challenges. And I think really people were really thinking of just the level 3s, and that really have some very specific challenges. Oh, that was another disclaimer I did want to include, because it's really, really important to me. The people that, and the families of the people that are diagnosed with ASD3 especially, have some serious challenges. They are very much in a disabled, even ASD1 is disabling, all right? Absolutely 100%. But when you have 2 or 3, your chances of being disabled are pretty high. Excuse me. And oh my gosh, just wait. He's such a baby. So it is some of those family members that have fought tooth and nail to get support for their children, for their loved one, have been concerned about this explosion of talk about autism and all these people who are verbal and the high functioning, the low support needs. They are concerned that we will take emphasis away from people will not see us as disabled, as the disabled classification, like they will lose support, the support that they need to be able to take care of their loved one. And so please know that's not my intent. I don't want to propagate that sort of feeling. And if just know that is not my intent. I do have my own story to share, though, and it's equally as valid. So, but it's and maybe they shouldn't have rolled everything all into this one spectrum. But again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done within the community. So all of that to say, I'm going to end a couple more quick things, because a lot of people have really been given trouble over, why do you even need to be diagnosed? If you're 61 years old, what in the hell do you need to know you're autistic for at that stage in the game? And this is the easiest, best way I've learned to address that, is because I would rather know that I'm a zebra than a broken horse. All my life, I thought I was broken. I found out last year I was never broken. I just run on a different operating system. I'm a different animal. We're the same, but we're different. And, I run on a Windows and you run on Mac. It's just different, right? And there's nothing broken about me. So that's why it's so important, no matter how old you are. So if you are 70 or 80 years old and think that you might be autistic after all this time, go for it. Find out. Look into it. It can be the start of your healing journey. And with that, the one last thing I want to say, I brought up, all these challenges that even people with ASD1 can have, that autism at this level can be debilitating, even though I've made it this far in my life and have had a quote unquote successful career, etc. Let me talk about that for 1 second. Up until last, a year and a half ago, I had a 22-year career in the career industry. I was an executive in the career industry. I was making very good money. I was so blessed to be in an industry and a position that I was very well paid for what I did. So for all intents and purposes, I was successful, right? And one of my passions in the career industry, so I was in outplacement, career management, executive leadership, training, that type of thing, right? Executive coaching. And I've been passionate for a long time about helping people figure out, or being able to figure out, what am I supposed to do with my life? I was very, very, it was one of the things I loved about being in that industry, because I was always trying to figure out what I wanted to do, right? And what my strengths are, because um, I could never figure out who I was, which is actually a very autistic thing. I could never figure out who I was. And come to find out that not only is that very common with autistics, but one of the most critical things that I've discovered in my, learning about autism is the very, very high dysfunction of autistics and employment. The chances of people not having the luck I did in my career, the and actually, if you look at the beginning of my career, so I said the last 22 years I had this kind of great career. Before that, uh-uh, uh-uh. I don't care what my IQ was. The challenges I had, it took me 4 different tries to finally get my degree. The only way I finally was able to get my degree in my 40s, I finally graduated. And the only way I was able to do that was by leaving my job, taking out every loan in the book, and going back to school as a full-time student in my 40s, because I could never handle doing 2 things at once. I there's a whole thing about monotropism, which is like this. Autistics have this like very tunnel vision into being able to, you know, it's like only this and nothing else, right? A very all or nothing approach that has been debilitating in my life. It is very hard for me to do 2 big things at one time. But anyway, I finally did it. I took off a year and a half and finished my degree and finally got that damn piece of paper. And that damn piece of paper, like within 6 months, I went back to work at the same place I had been. And within 6 months, I got a $20,000 raise in a new position, and from there just kept going up. And because that damn piece of paper has been so important, that's a whole nother issue. But one of the things that is propelling me forward, and one of the things that has to be fixed, and you know what, people, I'm going to say what I want on my own channel. I know there's a lot of shit nowadays about DEI, and especially with the new administration, there's going to be a lot more challenges to DEI, and everyone's killing their DEI programs. I personally, and I'm sorry for those who don't know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? That, you know, thoughtful organizations that care about their people are concerned about hiring the right, fairly hiring people and opening up opportunities for all. I believe truly that we don't need less DEI. I think we need more of it and add an end to it. It needs to be diversity, equity, inclusion, and neurodivergence. Somehow we have to look, even from a business standpoint, it makes so much sense. We used to, always sell these programs that helped companies to help with employee productivity, right? If you want to help productivity, take care of your neurodivergent employees. Do you know the value that you have in your hands with these neurodivergent people? The value, if you could just take care of them a little bit better and accept that they have their own quirks and proclivities and need some special support, if you just took care of them, they would take care of you instead of sitting there burned out and trying to figure out what the hell, how they can get through the day, because they need, that they get very uncomfortable being on video, or they need time to be able to process a response instead of being called on the carpet to give an answer right now. There's different ways we can learn to communicate and support our neurodivergent communities within the workplace. And the companies that take that to heart, I think there's some real work to be done there, people. So that's one of the things I'd like to bring some light to, because the number of autistic people in the ASD1 that cannot hold a job, it's high. It's really high. So anyway, I'm going to leave that there. I said this would, 35 minutes. Well, there you go. So much for that. So, as I said, I'm going to read you a card from the Love Who You Are Oracle. And the card that I pulled for today is number 43. You can read that. Celebrate the little things. Is that focusing? Celebrate the little things. And it says, part of loving your fabulous self is found in noticing and celebrating the little things. Don't wait for the big milestones or grand adventures. Celebrate the air in your lungs, the flowers blooming in the sidewalk cracks, and the way your heart feels when you hear that one song. The world is full of wonders, and you're one of them. Put your party hat on and celebrate that truth. So, people, thank you for listening to me today. I said it was going to be short, and that's what happens, but I'm not editing it, so you can fast forward maybe. Love you guys, and I will be back. If you don't see me for a while, don't be concerned. I'm just taking my time figuring out how I want to roll with this. So please subscribe so you know when I come back. And yeah, everybody stay warm, okay? Bye.